Thank you for joining us for The Drive Back, the movie podcast where we imitate our favorite thing to do after a movie, which of course is to talk about it on the ride home. I'm Garrett, and as always I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Mr. Adrian.
Hey there.
And today we've got another show and tell, which is what, Adrian?
It is where I have seen a movie and Garrett has not, and the other movie Garrett has seen and I have not, and then we show each other.
That's absolutely right. And today we've actually got two movies that have something in common. They've both got cars in them. I guess that's a really generic thing. but so all of this and more will be coming up here on The Drive Back. Alrighty, and we're back with a show and tell. Two movies that we have selected. Well, I selected one of them, you selected the other. Pretty different in terms of years made in Hollywood. We got one from the 2010s and one from the 1950s.
Yeah, but I think what I think is more correlated is the discussion of vanity over passion.
That is very... I like that.
Instead of cars.
Yeah.
I think that's a better one.
Yeah, I came up with that comparison on the fly, and now I got shown up for it, so it's all good. But let's go ahead, let's dive right in. Also, both of these movies are highly rated, not highly rated, but they're both on IMDb's 250 top films. So that's also an interesting
Rush
thing.
is on there, that's cool.
Yeah. So the first film today is what Adrian said, Rush. Released in 2013, it was directed by Ron Howard and stars Daniel Bruhl, Chris Hemsworth, and Olivia Wilde. Rush tells the story of the merciless 1970s rivalry between Formula One rivals James Hunt and Niki Lauda. It's also worth it to note that Rush is currently the 216th highest rated film of all time on IMDb's top 250, as voted by fans. So, this was your selection for the week. What made you pick Rush?
Oh, I just really enjoy this movie. I think it's a real story, first off. And I also think it's really well done. Kind of what I was talking about, the poise between doing it for the love and the purity of the sport versus doing it for the fame and the vanity of it. It's a perfect dichotomy in this movie, and I think it's played out really well in the film, as well as how it played out in real life. I think it's just a really interesting story.
Gotcha. So I guess this is my first time watching the movie. I had not actually seen Rush yet, so I'll give my quick general thoughts before we spoil the movie. I thought it was a good movie. It's of the modern Ron Howard movies, I'd say it's one of his better, probably his best one in recent years. There are a couple things I don't like as much about it, but I don't know how much it has to do with the movie. Well, it has to do with the movie itself, but like the story or anything like that. But we'll get more into that when we dive in a little bit more in critique of the film. Anything general you want to say before we divulge some spoilers?
No, I mean, it's your first time, so let's go ahead and dive into it.
Sure, and let me go ahead and just double check. I want to say that it's on Netflix if you want to watch it.
I don't.
Yes, it's on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, you can watch it there for free. Otherwise, you can rent it on any platform that's out there. But yeah, so spoiler warning for Rush. So we'll go ahead and get that out of the way. One of my biggest critiques about this movie, and it's not something that I would usually critique. I know a lot of people would. For this movie, it was a little too much for me. And there's a lot of narration.
Okay.
A lot of telling, not showing. And I think it's not necessarily something that's bad about the movie. It's just it got a little annoying. I don't know. I feel like you could have taken a little bit longer to like show things and more visually kind of, show what was going on. But that's just
I can
me.
see that. I guess my interpretation, I don't think there's too much narration, but I guess what I think the reason that could be the case is because it is a story that has already happened. Mm-hmm. So I think the idea is that it's supposed to be like Niki Lauda is telling you the story.
Yeah. I think maybe because this is like this was a public story. People knew about these people. This wasn't that long ago.
No.
Where you could have shown more behind the scenes stuff. The things that the fans and the audiences didn't get to see. Instead of just kind of like retelling it. Like
What did you feel like was a scene that you wish you saw instead of heard?
Uh I don't know. I watched this like way earlier this week, so I'm trying to remember. I didn't write anything down. The only scene where I thought it was good was at the end, going over James Hunt's life before he passed away, and kind of seeing the respect that Nikki actually had for him, which is
Sure.
really cool to see. I think it was mostly during like the middle of the movie. There were a lot of points that, again, I don't have a specific example because I can't remember any off the top of my head, like specifics. But there were just a couple of moments here and there that I felt like maybe you could have shown something. Also, that leads me into one of my favorite moments of this movie. If we want to springboard into that favorite moment, least favorite moment, whatever we want to do, when Nicky is having his first press conference after the accident.
Yeah.
And the one reporter's asking him, "Oh, how could your wife ever look at you the same way ever again?" And then James just goes into the room with the guy and beats the crap out of him.
Yeah,
Like-
and I think that's one of the reasons. That's also one of my favorite scenes, and I think what I love about what this movie does as a whole, aside from even just how it's done, is it tells the story of that it's possible to be immense rivals with someone but still respect them. And I think that's the whole point of this movie is like respect your enemy. And it's almost like they were almost brothers in the sense where like I can insult my family, but you're not allowed to. Like I could say that to Nicky Lauda, but you aren't close enough to him to say it. And I think it was just it's a really good movie about respect through animosity. And like even though all the emotions are flared on the track and everything, it's still at the end of the day a respect thing. They never thought ill of each other.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they were enemies, but they were probably the closest thing to friends that either one of them had.
Especially at that top of the sport, right? Like it's lonely at the top, and your enemies are kind of the only people you talk about all the time.
Or talk to.
Yeah,
except for like
so-
your crew people.
Yeah, so I just think it's a really interesting dynamic, and I'm all about like social dynamics and stuff, and I think it's really interesting to watch, and I think it's done really well. I think Ron Howard, in my opinion, did really illustrate that dynamic very, very well.
Also, it does kind of show a weird duality between the two, because James Hunt is obviously the more public character. He's the more hot-headed one. He's the more daredevil-y. He's the more risk-taking one, whereas Nicky Lauda isn't. And then you see like the changes they go through. Like James loses his wife. He goes through a lot of stress. He ends up not staying as long in Formula One. Nicky Lauda has his accident, but keeps his wife. He keeps on driving. There's a lot of interesting things that happen to both of them that I think a lot of people would expect to happen to the other.
Oh, you mean like vice versa?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did like the play on that as well. I mean, obviously this is based on a true story. I'm guessing there's a couple things that may have been fictionalized somewhat, as there are in any based on a true story movies.
Yeah, but I mean, this pretty much did happen.
Yeah.
All of it. Like the family dynamics, the accident, the press interviews, like all that stuff's recorded. So this is more like I would say of course some of it's made up, but I would say most of it is a visualization of a story that did really happen and is on record. It's in certain places because of course Formula One, I mean all that stuff is tracked. Like
Yeah.
all the race dates and weather reports and all that and interviews and everything. So I just think it's really cool. I've always been a fan of Formula One. I don't watch the sport actively. Like I don't watch it on TV. I don't watch NASCAR, but I like cars and I like going fast and I like when cars go fast and
And
Formula
these
One
go the fastest.
it doesn't get any crazier. And even though I don't watch them day to day, I have the utmost respect for people that can drive those cars because it is an insane level of skill.
Yeah, and if I can take a controversial shot real quick, it's actual racing. Sorry, not sorry, NASCAR. It's just a giant left turn. and it's not a sport. I'm sorry.
I think NASCAR is, or not NASCAR. I think Formula One is way more about the actual driver.
Yeah,
I think it's literally those turns and the weather conditions and knowing the track and knowing your car, and it's really really impressive. And I love movies like this, especially the scenes like it's almost like car porn when it's raining and the tires start spinning and they go into slow mo and you just see all the lights and everything. That's just like some of the most beautiful shots in the film or the cars, and it's really really cool to see. Cinematography is great.
the close-ups. Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of, and this actually leads me into one of my other critiques of the movie is that it has a weird visual style to it. I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen In the Heart of the Sea? With who was also had Chris Hemsworth in it. It was the movie about the actual incident that inspired Moby Dick.
No, no.
Okay, so both of these movies, this one had it less so than that one, but there is still this weird cloudiness to the visuals where it felt like a lot of it was fake. Like a lot of the shots of the cars driving by on the various different racetracks was visual effects.
Because I don't think it is.
It maybe it's some sort of filter over the movie or something. It just doesn't look real when it's not
Had to
showing
defend it, I
people.
would say that probably comes from him trying to create the memory feeling. Like
Maybe.
that's just an argument that I could have for it. I didn't notice it. I do notice like the tint on the film. It
There is a
definitely
tint.
has, yeah, like a gradient over it. But that's just a stylistic choice.
Yeah.
Like you look at even Marvel movies have that. I mean, some of the biggest movies, Avatar has that.
Yeah, it just like, and I'm not saying it's bad. Don't get me wrong.
No,
I'm saying it
it's
just
just
doesn't
like
work for me.
and more like dreamscapey almost. It's got like a weird floaty feel to it.
I guess. I mean, I always am coming back to this comparison in my head for like this and Ford v Ferrari, because I feel
I
that
never
Ford v
saw it.
Ferrari is the better movie, but it doesn't have that gradient over it. It doesn't have that weird kind of, I guess you're saying dreamlike quality that makes this movie feel a little weird at points. But that criticism aside, the races are spectacular.
Oh,
And
I
I
have another
wish
defense.
they would have shown more.
Yes, I wish there were more races. Another defense would say, in this feeling like that hazy kind of memory story, like telling a tale, is I think because the intention was that this was bigger, that they were larger than life during this time. That there might be like,
Yeah.
and again, that's just what I could argue if I was like sipping my wine at a film critique place. Like, oh yes, but here's what they really intended.
Oh yes. Oh
But
yes.
so like I could see. I guess what I could say is like because I like the movie so much, I can justify that in my head. Like I can move past that.
No, totally understand that.
Yeah.
When you have a movie you like, you're gonna justify pretty much everything. I got an argument about the sequel trilogy not too long ago, so like I get it. One thing though, I want to get your opinion on this. You know, we both said that we should have seen more racing.
I just like racing. Yeah.
Do you think they established the two of them as good enough drivers? Because I don't feel like we get that much of like James Hunt behind the wheel, like at all. It's just kind of like expected for you to know the people and like have known the names and known that they're good drivers. Whereas like,
I think I got enough of it. Again, I do think I could have gotten more driving, but I feel like by the end, I felt the stakes of like two of the best drivers in the world going at it, like the way they talked about the scoring and how those races happened. Here's a scene that I wish that they showed a little more of, where they could have done it when they just talked about the races won and lost throughout the whole season. Right, they skip over most of the season,
yeah,
and then they jump to the end. And I wish that they just showed a couple more races, like were there accidents, was like you said, was there driving where they avoided an accident. Like just show a little, even a montage could have
I
been.
was just gonna say a montage of them crossing the finish line would have been fantastic, but
Just with each race, like boom, boom, like who's
Yeah.
in first, who's in last, like that kind of thing. Yeah.
so, but yeah, I mean, other than that, this movie it's very enjoyable. In the I would say in the first act, it was a little rough. I was kind of like, do I really care? And then by the I would say by the beginning of the second act, I want to say it wasn't halfway through. It was about after the first like I would say the first quarter of the movie, not the first act, the first quarter.
Okay.
After that, I was fully on board, and I was watching. Not that I wasn't watching it, but like I was
Like
actually
like
paying
caring
it,
about
like
it. Yeah.
caring about.
Which I think is
everything
a
that's
pretty
going on.
impressive thing for a movie just about racing. I think a lot of films really struggle. I've watched a lot of racing movies in my life, and there's a lot that just, yeah, okay, I get that there's stakes because it's a race, but I don't care about it. And I feel like this movie does a really good job of making you feel both characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is no. They could, and actually, I should give this to the movie's benefit. They could have made one of them a villain. They didn't.
No,
They kept both of them on equal terms, and
both did villainous things.
yeah,
Like when Nicky Lauda points out that his car isn't regulation after he won. James, like, that's super nitpicky. Like that's a huge deal. But then James Hunt also does a ton of things that are super, because he's hot-headed, like you said. So it's like, again, it's just that equal playing field of the track, which I think is really, really cool.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and we can give some final thoughts, some scores. So I'll go ahead, since this is my first time, I'll go ahead and I'll do it first. I said that Rush is engaging and well acted. It only suffers from an inconsistent style, in my opinion, and too much narration. But the races are definitely incredible to watch. It is a very enjoyable film through and through. Also forgot to mention Daniel Bruhl is still an underrated actor, in my opinion, who played Nicky Lauda. And Chris Hemsworth is good here. I wouldn't say he's incredible.
I will say this in the middle of your final thoughts, though. I do think this is the most Chris Hemsworth I haven't thought he's Thor. I feel
That's
like
a
I
good
was
point.
really... He did so good in this role. In most other films, I'm like, oh, there he is. But this was his own whole character.
And I definitely, because this came out the same year as Thor: The Dark World, so I'm wondering if maybe he was trying to differentiate himself. Like, I can do more than just Thor.
Expand the portfolio and shows...
Yeah.
And I think he did. I think it's a great track for that, for sure.
Yeah. That being said, overall, I gave Rush an 82. I still think it is a great movie. Well worth your time, but I do think there are better racing movies out there. We'll have to do Ford v Ferrari at some point.
I feel like I have to readjust, because I had a lower score than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, let me run the numbers real quick. 'Cause that-
I'll edit in some calculator sounds, like
do the numbers floating around my head.
like the math equations.
No, I mean, it wasn't super far off. It's just so funny that I have like very little critiques and I did that. But yeah, I think this movie's super cool. I love the split and the, like Garrett was saying, the duality between the two drivers and equal playing fields, friends and enemies, and doing it for vanity and fame and the women, and doing it for the love of the sport and not caring about any of that. It really creates a very, very cool storyline and a very cool entanglement between the characters, which is really fun to watch. And yeah, the races don't hurt either. They're super cool. Love car, go fast. Very fun. And because of that, I gave this movie an 87. I think it's really, really good. It's definitely one of my favorite racing movies. I tend to like a lot of the older racing films where they didn't have the CGI, so you can tell it's all in camera. And that's really fun. But this is definitely one of my favorite new age ones. But yes, let's watch Ford v Ferrari because I've heard amazing things.
We can put it on the schedule if you want. We're scheduled out. I think we're almost scheduled through the entire year, so we could totally change some things up. All right.
To
Yeah, I know.
plan so far in advance if movies coming out.
We got to make it to 200. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, like we don't really do new releases on the show anymore, so we have this huge backlog that we can go through. You know,
Yeah, I think it's just tough to predict what I'm gonna want to watch in 6 months.
that's very true, and that's why we can change it on the fly. I changed one of the movies on the schedule yesterday, so
Yeah.
just throwing that out there. But let's go ahead and move on to the movie that I picked for today, which is Sunset Boulevard, which I'm going to just... The Garrett tried and true method of picking one of the, highest rated films of all time that Adrian hasn't seen, and, because trying to expand your film portfolio.
Sure.
Because of that, second film today is Sunset Boulevard, released in 1950. It was directed by Billy Wilder and stars William Holden, Gloria Swanson, and Erich von Stroheim. A screenwriter develops a dangerous relationship with a faded film star determined to make a triumphant return. It won 3 Oscars for Best Screenplay, Best Art Direction, and Best Music. It was nominated for 8 more, including Cinematography, Film Editing, Supporting Actor for Eric von Stroheim, Supporting Actress for Nancy Olsen, Best Actor for William Holden, Best Actress for Gloria Swanson, Best Director, and Best Picture. It is worth it to note that Sunset Boulevard is the 59th highest rated film of all time on IMDb's top 250 as voted by fans. Now, we've taken a step back in time to the 1950s. Adrian, this is your first time watching the movie. What did you think?
Yeah, in the tried and true Garrett method, there's not much that I can say that hasn't been said about this movie. But on my first watch, I think it's really a pullback of the curtain into Hollywood. I think we've gotten quite a few movies throughout time since this came out, but this may have been the first one, I'm not sure, that really kind of pulled back the veil on what it's actually like to be in the industry, and that it'll eat you up and spit you out, and kind of like Rush, which is why I related it, but there's definitely the arguably second main character who's all about vanity and not giving up her tried and true methods, and super, super stern and stubborn. And then there's the other writer who is much more about the passion of Hollywood and understands what she's good at and what she's not, and can do that. So I think it's just another duality film that was really, really good.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it is. There is, I guess you could say, there's a cut of this movie where it's a horror movie, for sure. If you play into the angle that she kidnapped this screenwriter and is forcing him to do all these things.
And I think it's also just a horror movie because it highlights all the bad stuff of Hollywood, too.
That, too, yeah. And I definitely throw this into the thriller genre. Because there's a lot of things that happen that make you kind of take a step back and be like, whoa, okay, slow down for a second. But we'll get into after we drop a spoiler warning. So for Sunset Boulevard, it is not available to stream anywhere. You will have to rent it. But I think we both agree, highly recommend, especially, like we say, if you're on this film journey with us, check it out. This is one that's...
like if you're in your, Lawrence of Arabia Singing in the Rain section of your journey, you can add this one onto it.
The classic film section.
Yeah, if you just watched Ratatouille, probably not.
We got
arguably really similar plot lines.
What, the rat kidnaps the human? I don't know. Anyhow, let's go ahead. Spoiler warning dropped for Sunset Boulevard. Wow. Alrighty. Where do we even begin with this movie?
Great start, because it was my first time watching it, so
Sure.
I thought there was a lot to not like about this movie, and it ended up all coming together in a piece that was enjoyable.
I'm interested to see what you have to say, but what you mean by that then?
Well, when it started, I definitely was thinking okay, this is going to be a slow-paced, pretty old-school style film. But quickly into the first act, it all comes together to create this very neat aesthetic and vibe to the whole movie that really stands on its own. And that's what I just start when I hit play. I definitely felt that initial old movie, how is this gonna go feeling that I get sometimes, and it quickly got rid of that. I was definitely enjoying it all the way through. It was very, very good.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I was actually just thinking while you were talking, there's a lot of movies that, you say we all say that could be remade. I definitely think, I think we had talked about this before, but Lawrence of Arabia should and could and hopefully would be remade by Denis Villeneuve. Which
After the next 7 Dunes, yeah.
Right? I think, given the fact that you could remake this movie as a period piece, taking place in the 1950s, 1940s, because it's a period piece, I feel like you could get Robert Eggers to do it.
I agree, and I think Daisy Ridley should be the writer.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was going to say it should be Anya Taylor-Joy because he's she's his
Well,
new
then
like.
they should play one should play the other. Like they should figure that out. But that would be really good.
I would love to see it because I was reading an interview because I just watched The Northman, so I've been getting a lot of like news pieces about it. And he said that he doesn't want to work on modern films. He wants to do things that take place in the past. And I was like, this would be an amazing remake because he could play into that thriller, more horror-y angle.
Totally.
Then, but perhaps some of the messaging may be lost. I don't know. But I love stories like this that deal with the transition from silent to talkie film. We already watched Singing in the Rain, which dealt with something very similar. But also movies like The Artist, which I really love that movie. They're
arguably Charlie Chaplin's. What movie did we just watch?
Modern Times.
Yeah, that is about transitioning out of that era.
Or it's not so much like the Hollywood history, but like a technological revolution, like the machinery being introduced with the whole the lunch thing. Yeah, definitely. I love it when there's that kind of storyline. So I think it really resonates with me. But we need to get the big elephant out of the room. Gloria Swanson is amazing in this movie.
Yeah, the whole climax at the end is pretty seat shaking for sure. It's
definitely
really, really powerful.
And there's a genuine creepiness to the way that she kind of looks and the way that she acts, especially in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
After she's, killed poor William Holden, and she's just sitting there expecting cameras to come, and she's putting her makeup on. Everyone's like, "Why did you kill him?" And she's just not answering. It's creepy, man.
Yeah, and I think the whole scene that everyone talks about, that big I saw literally every picture has her staring into the camera, that famous shot.
I'm ready for my close up.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think I really like that because to me it was a moment where she completely decided not to progress in the real world. Yeah. She took that moment and that was the breaking point or the stepping off point of her saying nope, my brain is thinking the way that it is and it's never gonna listen to you. But it was also the greatest moment of her life in the film.
Yeah.
So it's people are thinking, oh, she's a really good actress, but in reality, she's just broken. She is just shattered now.
She's so far gone.
Yeah. But it's super interesting, and you could. I don't know if she was actually going through something, but it felt like you could absolutely see it in her eyes that she was broken.
Yeah.
In the scene, it was crazy.
Something to be said too that maybe she may have some sort of mental illness toward the end. I mean, definitely some sort of. She's not that old. She's only in her 40s or something like that.
Remember he talks to her and he says there's nothing wrong with being 50. So by the end of the
middle-aged,
at least 52. Well, back then that's not middle-aged.
True, yeah, but what we consider middle-aged now, William Holden does call her middle-aged in the movie. So
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, but so maybe there's a case to be made potentially early Alzheimer's or something along those lines.
I also want to talk about how great the dynamic was between Joe and the other writer. I forget her name. Betty?
I'm not too sure. Let me look at it real quick.
Joe and Betty feels right, but I'm not positive. But their whole dynamic, it's so fascinating that that he's...
You're right, Joe and Betty.
Oh, nice. That he's dead the whole movie. You are aware of that, but you still have so much hope for that relationship and that budding growth that's happening with the new writer and her pushing him and them kind of squabbling, but then him being better for it and vice versa. But the ending, but somehow I found it watching wishing that they were going to show that didn't happen. The movie really had that spin to where I wanted a different outcome.
Yeah, and a lot of the time, I would arguably say on your first time, did you know how it would happen? Did you know how he'd end up in the pool?
No.
Exactly. And so on your first watch, every
time he was in a house, I was like, I was trying to look back to see, is there a pool?
Yeah, it's one of the things, I wish I could go back and watch this for the first time again, just because you genuinely don't know Like, you're like, whoa, okay, oh, this is how they're starting the movie?
Yeah.
It's a very
Yeah,
famous
it's
example of
really-
starting at the end.
Yeah.
So,
Christopher Nolan would be proud.
also, Eric von Stroheim, who played the butler, his name was Max, he was also very good in the movie.
Yeah. It's a great movie.
And the reveal about him having taken in Norma is pretty
Host her
huge.
and taking care. Yeah, crazy.
And he's been, like, and they slowly reveal it too. Like, you've been writing all those letters, haven't you? And he's like, no, I can't talk about that. And he's like, it's just, it's weird. There is a horror movie here, man. I swear.
They have been originally, and then they decide, like, maybe someone in the first screening said, like, oh, this is a great biopic about Hollywood, and then they changed it.
Interesting. So I'm looking at the trivia because I had read that somewhere, someone that went into the initial screening for this movie, like, thought it was a horror movie. Let me see.
I just ran into that problem just the other day. She said that District 9 is a horror movie.
It's definitely not.
That's what I said.
Let me see. I can't find it. There was someone that said that it was like one of the scariest movies they'd ever seen because it was about something that could definitely happen. But anyhow, yeah. Apparently, this is actually really interesting. Unlike the character she played, Gloria Swanson, who played Norma, had accepted the fact that the movies didn't want her anymore and had moved to New York, where she worked on radio and later television. Although she did get, the offer to play the lead. So unlike Norma, she had accepted that she was done. So it's really cool, and then got an Oscar nomination for it. So it's like you kind of have to feel good after that. But yeah, anything else you want to talk about with Sunset for your first time?
My final thoughts are that it's obviously a very good movie. It's tried and true. It's definitely had its stay on the IMDb top list. And it definitely deserves that place. It is a certain type of movie. I don't think this is one that I would be, like, recommending very commonly. I think you'd have to be in a pretty niche spot for me to recommend this to you. But it is worth watching if you're going through that critically acclaimed series of films that you just know is going to be good and you want to watch a great movie. This is definitely one that's a masterclass in so many things regarding acting that's worth checking out.
Yeah, if you want to move beyond the whole, like, common blockbuster film type movie fandom, like, you want to start, I don't want to say getting more educated, but, like, you want to start, exposing yourself to, more different types of film. I will always recommend this film, though, especially specifically for that, people who are looking to be like, yeah, I'm really liking the Avengers and Jurassic World and stuff, but, like, I want to know more about movies, and be like, Sunset Boulevard's always on that list. So.
Yeah, I think it's on the list, but I feel like I would do, like, Singing in the Rain or even the Charlie Chaplin Modern Times first.
For different periods in film, I would say, yeah.
Sure. But yeah. So yeah, and because of that, I gave this movie a 90. It's not my ultra cup of tea. It's an incredible movie. I won't be watching it again, probably ever. I feel like I've seen it, and it's great, and that's where it'll sit with me.
Yeah, and at least now you get the references. So if anyone ever says, "Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up," you'd be like, I know that. Instead of just some reference on, like, Family Guy or something. But yeah. So as far as my final thoughts, I said it's still unsettling and a joy to watch over 70 years later, with Gloria Swanson's incredible performance and the intrigue of it all creating a memorable film. And unsurprisingly, I gave it a 95. I think it's a very, very good movie.
Yeah.
So,
nice.
That's going to bring us to an end for this episode. Adrian, if no one has followed us online yet, where can they do that?
The Drive Back Podcast on Apple Podcasts. If you give us 5 stars, you'll get a shout out. We've been doing that lately, and that really helps the podcast grow. The Drive Back Podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere else you listen. Go ahead and follow us on there. And then on YouTube, if we have our actual videos, you can see us. If you're seeing us now, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the bell. On all platforms, we post every Monday. And we review a ton of movies, so you never know what's going to come out next.
That is correct. Correct? Oh my gosh, correct. It has been a long work day already. But Next week, we are going to be doing a sort of special version of a First Timers. It's a First Timers mixed with a Phone a Friend, so I'm looking forward to that. So be on the lookout for that. The week after that's our 100th episode spectacular. I still have not breached my NDA. I don't know about you.
No, I mean, I just haven't told anyone, but
Oh, boy.
yeah, I know that we haven't. I mean, it's kind of been radio silence since then, but I know at least it's all secured on email. Like we're good to go.
Yeah, we're all set.
It's
I
yeah,
mean-
they've been a little quiet. They were like, gosh, what can I say? It was really. We did have a lot of contact with the people that are going to help us do what we're doing, and then they're kind of radio silent. So if you're listening to this, please text me back.
Well, hopefully that gets taken care of because it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think it's all squared away. I think it's literally just like a couple. I think we have like a couple more signatures, but I think we'll be fine.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the sooner we can get this, not sooner we can get it done, the better. That's not what I meant to say. I cannot wait to do this.
Yeah, I think I just want to do it. I think it's going to be crazy, but we do have the firm date to record to get it all done, so we're good to go on that.
Absolutely. Cannot wait for you guys to hear it. So we will be on the week. Next week, again, First Timers. Week after that is the 100th episode spectacular. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We love you so much. We'll see you next time here on The Drive Back. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Drive Back. Make sure to be on the lookout for new episodes every Monday, and make sure to follow us on social media.